Hey guys, it's Debbie. What's up? Welcome to my channel. I hope everybody's having a good morning. I can never tell when I'm live because I don't hear the thing half the time. Like, I hear part of it and not all of it, and I don't know where it starts and I don't know where it stops, and I'm just. I see a little thing that says live in the corner, but then I'm not live because then it'll come on and part of it will come on and then it'll whatever. Good morning, everybody. Hey, Judy. Hey, Jennifer. Hey, Wiggles. In an interview, Betty said, I don't even want to read this. The law has to take into account the difference between men and women in terms of power. Men have all the power. That's why Dan did to me what he did. This whole case is a story of extremes, extremes of rich to poor, and all the rest. I said I represent what can happen to women in divorce courts. All right. Wiggles, you're always mine. Don't even pretend that you're not. You know you're addicted to me. But I don't get Wiggles. Yeah, she was stuck in the upper class mentality, but she hadn't been upper class her whole life. That's the thing I can't wrap my head around. Why couldn't she just say, okay, so I won't buy the $8,000 dresses anymore? I will buy the $100 dresses. I mean, like, I can't afford $100 dresses. She could still have afforded $100 dresses, you know? Like, $16,000 is a lot. And she didn't have the kids. Like, if you don't have kids to pay for, and especially back then, didn't you say like 16,000 a month was something like 500,000 in today's money? That's a lot of money. That's a good point too, Judy. I doubt they were ever poor in the sense you and I understand. Both came from wealthy families. Her poor and real poor are two different things. Yeah, because like I have family that not I'm not saying anything bad about it cuz I was the same way when my dad was alive. So, I'm not saying anything negative about it. I think if you have family that's willing to do that, that's great. Um because like I was going to say I have family that does this and I used to be the same way. Like if you have a family member that has money and you don't have money and they can help you out, you might be poor, but you're not really poor. You're not destitute, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. You know, you have a way out. You're not homeless. You know, you're not at the risk of being homeless because you have somebody that's going to help you out. To me, that's not, you're not poor, you know? If you have a wealthy family member that can take you in or help you out or whatever, but she wanted to be rich and oh, 35,000. Well, still, that's back then that was an annual salary. Because I remember I graduated high school in 87. This all happened around that time, right? Yeah, yeah, because I remember, um, oh, 75,000. Now you just put numbers in the chat, woman. What was it 35,000 for? 16,000 equaled 75,000. When I graduated from high school, I remember thinking I was going to make $35,000 a year as an RN. And I remember thinking how much money that was. I thought that was like a fortune. And that's about what I make a year now, which is crap. No, I don't even make that much. I'm talking like Travis and I combined, I think is what we make a year now. No, I don't even think we make that much a year. It's crap now. Back then, though, it was a lot. Okay, so we finished that. Thank God we finished. Guy. That. I can't believe that they had some doctor dude that didn't even look at the case. And like he talked about, it reminded me of talking about the stages of grief. It was like the stages of infidelity. First you have cold rage and then you have hot rage. Like, is this really like a science? No. Okay. Oh, it's another doctor. Dr. Catherine D. Francesca. I hope she's not as buzz.
Dr. Broderick, could you please state your full name and spell your last name? My name is Catherine D. Francesca. That's spelled capital D I.
Hey, Carla.
Francesca. Thank you.
Yes. Doctor, what is your occupation?
All right, StreamYard, come on.
I'm a psychologist licensed in the state of California.
And what is your educational background and preparation?
My graduate training in psychology was at St. Louis University, where I received both a master's degree and a doctorate degree. Prior to that, I had majored in psychology at Newton College of the Sacred Heart in Boston, Massachusetts.
It's hump day, y'all. Judy's using camels to greet everybody today.
Part of my training for my doctorate in psychology and my license involved an internship. I was required to have 3,000 hours of internship.
Any area that concentrated on in your
And adults.
I'll start
and training with children, adolescents, and adults. In my internship and in my instruction at St. Louis University.
Okay. And what has been your professional experience?
I have worked as a consultant to schools. I have worked in private practice as a psychologist doing clinical and forensic work. And from 1974 until 1986, I worked for San Diego County Mental Health in the forensic department.
Had you worked as in any institutions where they were dealing with inpatient people?
Yes, I've worked, as part of my training, I worked in a psychiatric institution for institutionalized severe internship was to see adults who were inpatient at a psychiatric facility.
Your Honor, we will stipulate that Dr. DeGrange has his qualifications here.
Stipulation?
Well, Your Honor, I think that we should,
All right, go ahead. Were you, now you indicated that you worked from 1974 in the San Diego County Mental Health. Was there any particular department you worked in?
It was in the forensic department.
Okay, and what was what type of work were you doing in the mental health department?
What we would do would be evaluations on people referred from the court or from the probation department.
Okay. And have you taught or instructed at any institutions?
Yes, I taught a counseling psychology course years ago at Hood College in Maryland. I have taught the psychological testing in the school and other testing and professional psychology, which is a graduate school training psychologist in San Diego. And I'm currently being asked to teach next semester there a course in what they call clinical inference, which teaches the students really how to put all the different psychological tests together and write a report. I've also taught for the state department that sets standards and training for probation officers and parole agents. And for them, I have taught various courses, including a class in psychopathology explaining all different types of mental illness, and classes in personality disorders.
Okay. And do you have memberships in any professional affiliations? And do you hold any offices in those?
Yes, I'm a member of the American Psychological Association, which is our national association. I'm a member of the Society for Personality Assessment. I'm a member of our Academy of San Diego Psychologists, which is our local professional association. And I have been president of the Academy of San Diego Psychologists and held various positions within that academy.
Okay. And were you, at some point in time, asked to work on the... Now, I take it that when you work on a case, you do get paid, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And what is there a standard rate of pay that you are paid in this case?
Well, my standard rate of pay is $100 per hour, a court rate, and I will bill at $100 an hour. I'm not sure if they are paying that or half of that, perhaps $50 an hour. I'm not sure at this point.
Did you review any material in the preparation of testimony in this case?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us the material that you reviewed? Type of material?
Yes, I the police reports. I reviewed the preliminary hearing transcript. I reviewed the transcript from the last trial. I reviewed the different medical files from County Mental Health, from Claremont Hospital, patient files from Dr. Gerald Nelson. I reviewed
Have you reviewed defense investigation reports?
I reviewed all of the investigative reports provided to me that were provided. The investigations were done by the defense, and the investigative reports prepared by the prosecution. I reviewed the two marriage encounter books, one that was prepared by Mr. Broderick, one that was prepared by Mrs. Betty Broderick. I reviewed transcripts of the telephone tapes from Mrs. Broderick leaving the tapes on the Mr. Broderick's phone machine. I listened to those tapes. I reviewed psychological testing materials from the different mental health professionals, including from Dr. Nelson's file, from Claremont Hospital, and from work done by Dr. Meredith Friedman.
Okay. Had you had an opportunity to review writings of Mrs. Broderick?
Yes, I reviewed, I read all of the diaries, and I read her story.
Okay. And have you had the opportunity to see Elisabeth Broderick at the county jail?
Yes.
And can you tell how many times you've seen her approximately?
Nine times.
Okay, and the times that you've seen her, have that been for varying lengths of time and over various time periods?
Yes, that's true. I estimated that I spent about 12 and a half hours with Mrs. Broderick.
Now, there were, you indicated that you've seen some test of Elisabeth Broderick, that were administered to her. Could you give us an idea of which tests those were?
I've seen Dr. Friedman's testing protocol, and Dr. Friedman administered a test called the Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventory 2, Rotter Sentence Completion, a Rorschach, a Shipley Institute of Living Scale, thematic apperception test, projective drawings, and a hand test. I also saw and reviewed Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Inventories administered by Dr. Nelson and by jail staff at the jail. And I also saw a Milan administered at Claremont Hospital by Dr. Louis Nydorf.
Okay. And the tests that you've seen administered to Elisabeth Broderick, were those all tests that were done at one period of time or over a long period of time? How would you characterize those?
No, they were done at different times over a number of years, I think beginning in 1986.
Okay. And what is and were you also able to review various opinions of mental health people, either interpreting the scores or interpreting their impressions of what they saw of Elisabeth Broderick over a period of time?
Yes, I reviewed the files, including the narratives in the county mental health records, in the jail county mental health records, in the Claremont Hospital records. I reviewed Dr. Nelson's notes. I reviewed notes as well as an investigation interview with Dr. Jacobson, who also saw her. I also I forgot to mention, I reviewed a deposition of Dr. Gerald Nelson and trial testimony during the divorce, and I reviewed a deposition of Dr. DeVos.
Okay. And I take it that in your reviewing of the transcript from last year, you were able to review testimony of people who testified in the last trial as to her mental condition.
That's right. I reviewed the trial transcript, including Dr. Lusterman's testimony, Dr. Zonkin's testimony, the prosecution psychiatrist, Dr. Goldspan's testimony, and my own testimony.
Okay. And what is the purpose of giving psychological tests?
Psychological tests help in determining a diagnosis, an understanding of the person's functioning over time, and it gives more data than simply just having an interview.
Okay. And is there a purpose in having an interview with somebody when you're making a determination or a diagnosis?
Well, I think an interview is very important, because what you're doing when you're doing a psychological or psychiatric evaluation is that there are many hypotheses regarding what is wrong with someone, and you're weighing the evidence, and as you have an interview, you are developing hypotheses, and you check those hypotheses out from information that you then develop later in the interview, from reading materials, and then from also looking at the tests, so that at the start of an evaluation there are many possibilities regarding what's wrong with somebody, but as you proceed, then some are more confirmed by all of the data and some have less support in the data.
Okay. Now, in this case, were you able to make a diagnosis that was consistent with her functioning over time?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you do that?
Well, in this case, I was able to be helped by having information regarding Mrs. Broderick's functioning prior to my seeing her, including descriptions of her from people who knew her prior to 1983. I had some writings from her from 1976 that was very helpful. And then also I collected a history, got historical information from her, and then historical information from the other reports available to me. Of course, very important were the observations by the trained people, psychiatrists who saw her in the past. And also some of the tests help with giving an understanding of a person's long-term functioning.
Okay. And were you able to make a diagnosis? When we use the term diagnosis, what are we talking about?
Well, when you're talking about a diagnosis, really all you're talking about is a summary statement or a label signifying what's wrong with the person, what the problem is.
Okay. And how is that done in the field of psychology or psychiatry? What's the method that's used?
Well, in terms of diagnosis, you typically give a diagnosis regarding what's wrong with him on two different axes. The second axis, I'll tell you because that's the easiest, are long-term conditions that would be either a personality disorder or a learning disorder. And the idea is that those are chronic conditions that underlay any acute conditions, anything that might be happening right now. So on axis 2, if there is a personality disorder diagnosis, that's where it goes. On axis 1, you diagnose everything else. So if a person is schizophrenic, that would go on Axis 1. If their problem was alcohol abuse, that would go on Axis 1. If their problem was depression, that would go on Axis 1.
Okay. Now, on Axis 1, were you able to, was there any diagnosis that you made of Elisabeth Broderick?
Yes, I diagnosed her as having a depressive disorder and a major depressive episode, and I diagnosed it as recurrent.
Okay. And what is a depressive disorder?
When we say depressive disorder, we're talking about a diagnosis that there is something wrong with affective functioning, emotional functioning. A depressive disorder is more than feeling depressed.
The severity of when it hits me or anything like that, if I had any idea, I wouldn't mind.
Do you understand that what has been contained in media coverage of this case, either in the past or in the future, is not evidence?
I understand that, yes, ma'am.
Have you read anything at all about this case or heard anything about it on the
How
news?
can you miss it?
Okay. Do you understand that as a juror, you would
What
have
is
to base your
happening?
decision solely on the evidence presented
What is happening? I'm confused.
in court?
Yes, ma'am.
And sometimes that's easy for people or difficult depending on what information they have available to them or in their own personalities. Do you believe that you as a
Low energy is
What
typically
the
a
heck was that?
complaint with people who are depressed, feeling that they just don't have the energy that they did in the past. You will see crying spells. People will become detached from others, spend some time withdrawing from people, detachment from people who they were not detached from in the past. Thinking changes. The expectations they have are that negative things are going to happen, and when they interpret a situation, if there is a possibility for a pessimistic interpretation and an optimistic interpretation, they will typically take the pessimistic interpretation. They feed themselves information about how helpless they are and how hopeless. They feel overwhelmed and feel that there's nothing that they can do to solve their problems. Typically, you'll hear people say that they feel like they're in a hole and they can't climb out, or they feel like something is pushing them down, that type of a sense. Really, their whole psychic world and everything they see is colored by this feeling of doom and feeling of depression.
Okay. Do you
Ugh. StreamYard. I'm trying to do my grocery shopping. I don't have time for this mess. Yeah, it was a court TV oopsie. That sounded like jury selection. Because she said, will you as a juror? I was like, what in the heck is happening? That was crazy. Yeah, with major depressive disorder, you don't want to get out of bed and do anything. Absolutely. being depressed zaps your energy. What she had was not depression. Depression zaps your energy. You don't want to do anything but just lay around and cry all the time. It's
You frequently see that, and what would you see if you see a major depression?
Well, it's not uncommon for somebody to let their physical do not be concerned about how they dress or their hair, that type of thing, or at least not as concerned. Oftentimes people describe just having difficulty getting dressed, so often they stay in bed later, and it's an effort to get dressed every day. It's an effort to fix their hair.
Will there be anything that you see you expect to see weight gain, for instance?
Well, a typical changes are eating disorders, either loss of weight, some people can't eat at all, or some people eat as a way of trying to make themselves feel better, so that you will see a weight gain.
Okay. Does it have anything to do with self-esteem?
Yes, self-esteem for a depressed person is tremendously affected. You don't like yourself. You look at everybody else and think that they have some answer or some magic that you don't have. Very often what happens with people who are depressed is well-meaning friends will say, snap out of it. There's no reason to feel this way. The world is wonderful. Just walk outside. Look how lucky you are. And then that makes them even feel worse because they can't snap. Suicidal will say to you, I'm not going to commit suicide, but I sure wouldn't mind it if I ended up dead somehow, that type of thing.
Okay. Now, the depression, is that something that's so pervasive that appear to be in a major depressed mode with somebody?
Well, with any diagnosis, there's always a continuum from someone who has the symptoms massively and, for example, needs to be in a hospital, and somebody who has the symptoms but is able to control the symptoms part of the time. So the types of different pictures you will see will be somebody who is able to put themselves together and do well in the morning, but by the afternoon they start dragging, and in the evenings are very difficult for them, and at nighttime and going to bed and being but they are able to get themselves going and in gear by, noon. You'll see people who will do and drop back down into a depression. Typically, with somebody who's suffering from a recurrent depression, you see that. You see that they'll propel themselves for a little while, they'll do well, people will think that they're doing better, and then again the depression kind of overtakes them. Usually when something happens that they interpret as traumatic, then the depression comes and hits them again.
Okay. Now, you indicated people being able to master depression or propel themselves. Were you able to see that in Mrs. Broderick at all?
Well, I think that she does a lot of masking of depression as well as attempting to master it. She does propel herself into activity, and she also puts her feelings almost like into compartments and tries to suppress them and repress them, so that she actively, I think a great deal of the time, fights against her depression. Even with me, when she would start to cry, she would immediately choke that back and make a joke, a flippant comment, usually a kind of self-derogatory comment, and immediately cut off the tears.
Now, when we're talking about, are there different kinds of diagnosis of depression that you can have?
Yes. When you're talking about affective disorders or disorders of emotion, there are many different diagnoses. And what a diagnosis really does is try to lead you in knowing what basically to apply the right treatment. Now, some people have what's called a bipolar affective disorder, where they have bouts of depression along that same affective category is a cyclothymic cycle. A cyclothymic disorder is someone who bounces back between energy, manic or hyperactive, and depressed, but the cycles and the symptoms don't seem so extreme as a major depressive disorder or a bipolar affective disorder, but that they're constantly cycling between depression and propelling themselves into activity on the other cycle.
Now, were you able to, was there any mental health professionals at the beginning of her testing, which you indicated was in 1985, that saw something less than a major depressive disorder and saw, for instance, cyclothymic disorder?
Well, Dr. Jacobson, who saw Mrs. Broderick, may I refer to my notes in terms of a date when he saw her?
Yes.
Thank you. The first time he saw her was in 1980, before this happened, when she came to him for another reason. But then when he started seeing her,
It's both acting up, Carla, as usual.
be fine. And I think that his impression at that time was a cyclothymic disorder, which is the one that I just described, that talks about depression and then cycles of manic behavior.
Okay. Now, you were when you were talking about the masking of depression, and you also talked about the suppression of denial. Therapist at the jail.
Dang it. Stop buffering. It's loaded already. Why are you
The
buffering?
killings, Mrs. Broderick was interviewed by a number of different mental health people who work as a part of county mental health, but they're situated in the jail. And social worker Louise Hines, and she indicated that she thought things like there would be tears in her eyes. I think she used the word a glimmer of tears in her eyes, and smiling broadly at the same time. She talked about a painful death from cancer of a dear friend of hers, and was smiling as she talked about it. Deputies wrote a note to county mental health saying Mrs. Broderick was awake much of the night last night and crying, sometimes crying very hard. And when the social worker confronted her with this, she dismissed it and denied it. So that you get a picture of somebody who is not, that there is a lot of emotion going on there. There is a tearing, there's the crying at night, but not able to deal with it, not able to talk about it, not able to share it with other people.
Okay. Was there other mental health professionals there that either saw a state of shock or saw a depressive episodes?
Yes, but may I refer to the notes just for a second to refresh my mind? Thank you. I know that she was eventually seen by a psychiatrist, and I think it was Dr. Robinson, and he was trying to assess her. He was concerned about
Okay, camera's going off. Did you guys notice that we did not have any glitches yesterday? I didn't say anything because I didn't want to jinx it. But now we're having glitches again, so I'm going to say it. Yesterday was perfect.
At that time, because it was soon
Bye, Carla. I hope you feel better. Stay safe.
after Mrs. Broderick had come into and the attorney felt that she should not be talking to anybody without first talking to an attorney.
Did he talk about some symptom, labelle?
He described her as having the symptom labelle indifference, which is a hysterical symptom, hysterical shock. Later on, she saw
Good God.
a psychiatrist, and when her depression became more obvious in terms of symptoms and her inability to cope, and was prescribed Prozac, which is an antidepressant medication, and eventually did take that antidepressant medication. And I don't remember the psychiatrist's name who prescribed that, but I think it was Dr. Butler, I'm not positive.
And would it be unusual, someone who was in hysterical shock, not even to remember having an interview with that person?
Well, that's very typical of someone who is in shock, that they, especially after a trauma, something terrible happening, that they will have real holes in their memory for right after the incident, so that it will be some things they'll remember and some things they won't remember, and there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason why they remember what they do and what they don't. But it's not unusual to have someone not even remembering being interviewed.
And were you able to see from the interviews of various people the causes of depression?
Well, there are many different factors involved in depression. The typical cause that one considers is loss. Loss times.
Donna Adelson and her defense team have filed an 18-page motion for a new trial. In it, they question jurors and say they want to interview two of them about their conduct and verdict. Their conduct? What about their conduct? What did they do that they need to be questioned? I mean, they all file a motion for a new trial. Didn't they poll? They didn't poll the jury, did they? I can't remember now. I think they declined to poll the jury, didn't they?
or a sickness where you lose a prior state of health. Certainly loss, like a loss of depression, divorce, death of somebody in the family is likely to.
I do not have the patience for this today, y'all. I'm gonna be straight up honest with you. This is gonna aggravate the mess out of me today. Stop
A
it!
loss of material possessions, like people who have lost their house in a hurricane, as precipitating. Even if a person, sometimes we see people who are depressed and there doesn't seem to be a definite loss, but typically when they will have told themselves or interpreted their world in such a way that they feel a sense of hopelessness and a sense of helplessness because of a loss or something like that.
Does the helplessness and hopelessness or lack of control or negative events, does that have any impact on whether the person is...
Sense of helplessness and a sense of hopelessness has impact not only on whether you're going to be depressed, but on the depth of the depression and how stable it is. So that if you feel that the problem that you are facing is stable over time and that there's nothing that you can do to resolve that problem, then you are at risk for suffering a very severe depression and for it not getting better for a long time, for it being very difficult to resolve. Sense of lack of power to solve the issue, something very close to depression. For example, if you're laid off from work and you're laid off because that company is having difficulty, you are at risk for depression, but you're at much greater risk for depression, and the depression is likely to last longer if indeed you become depressed. Not only the company, but all the companies with, for example, within that city, or be able to get another job. So that it's kind of a global sense of hopelessness that envelops the person and they become powerless.
Research show anything about how people estimate the kind of control they have over the events surrounding them, depressed people?
Well, of course, the whole problem with depression is that it's very cyclical, so that once you start thinking like a depressed person thinks, then your estimation of your own sense of power and ability is colored by the mood and the depressed sense that you have. So that typically, and I think the research has shown that people tend to underestimate the amount of control they actually do have, and have tremendously negative expectations about what life is going to be like for them.
Okay. And are there...
Well, there are many others, but things that...
Can you give us some examples of other things related to people who are depressed?
Objection irrelevant. Well, it's vague, sustained on that ground.
Does depression how people either select or process this information they're getting?
I think it has to answer. No. Overruled, you can answer that, Doctor.
Well, typically, if there is an array of information out there and they can interpret something many different ways, they will typically interpret it the way that it is least flattering to themselves. They
Your Honor, and I would object as to double.
Objections overruled. Continue your answer, Doctor.
Your Honor, I would just at least like a ruling. I thought we were going to have one objection from one attorney.
That's correct. Which one's going to be doing the cross? You do the objection, Mr. Burkhoff. Go ahead.
And the other thing is that they typically it's very in the past and function in the past.
Does it affect their ability to perceive time or how they remember time?
Typically, the time sense is distorted.
Okay.
You will see people talking about things that that happened a long time ago as if they just happened, and it's almost as if they've not resolved things, negative things in the past, and so that and don't put things behind them so that everything is still very salient and important in their life.
Now, if we could talk about symptoms of depression and the diagnosis, can you tell us, has there been a consistency of diagnosis as to some depressive disorder?
Yes, there has been a consistency in the diagnosis as to some type of depression that she was suffering.
Okay. And would that be with not only the doctor she's seen, but at the hospitalization she's had and at the county jail?
Overruled, you can leave in that area. Go ahead.
Yes, she was diagnosed as having a bipolar. Let me step back from that. In 1986, I believe it was, she was hospitalized for a short while. She was originally taken to county mental health. This was after she had banged into Mr. Broderick's front door with her vehicle. She was taken to county mental health, and while there, they gave, which mixed emotional, immediately see her as someone who needed to be hospitalized, but they kept her in screening and indicated to her that was because she had made suicidal statements and homicidal statements, and therefore they wanted to make sure that she wasn't a danger. She was in Claremont Hospital. When she went to Claremont Hospital, now I need to check my notes for a second, if I may.
Yes.
I think the question is no, she's
As to what the diagnosis was.
Well, the diagnosis changed. So, then she She was then tested, given a test called the Milan test, and on the basis of that test, the psychologist who tested her also interviewed her, gave her a diagnosis of dysthymia, adjustment disorder. He changed his diagnosis to a
For instance, Dr. Nelson, did he diagnose her as having any type of depressive disorder?
And what particular time? You said over a period of time. You gave that question just now.
yes.
Already gone, once she was in jail. The test that Dr. Friedman did they also show a depressive disorder?
Yes, the tests that have been done by Dr. Friedman are consistent with a diagnosis that she is suffering from depression. The MMPI that was done, the two MMPIs that were done in the jail are also consistent with an affective diagnosis, a diagnosis of depression. Dr. Gerald Nelson administered an MMPI in his office in 1987, and that was the results of that MMPI are also consistent with a diagnosis of depression.
Did you talk to her about the symptoms normally associated with depressive disorders?
Her meaning
Betty Broderick.
Mrs. Broderick. I talked with her regarding how she was feeling, yes.
Okay, and did she describe what you would expect to see in someone who's suffering from depression?
When I was working with her, yes, to the point that I was concerned, and she talked to me about whether she should take Prozac. She's afraid to take medication. I encouraged her to consider taking the medication and work with the psychiatrist regarding that. She described herself pre-incident also as having crying spells. I think she indicated one time that sometimes she had such difficulty walking around that she would find herself holding herself up from counter as she moved from counter to counter in the kitchen. She used the term felt like a horse was standing on my chest, describing this feeling. Also, what she was feeling it through her diaries also.
Did the diaries, you were able to review the diaries?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and was there things in the diaries that showed that she was suffering from depression?
Yes.
And what kind of things were those?
Just states of hopelessness and despair, not knowing who to turn to for help, feeling like her life as it was over and she had nothing to look forward to and that type of thing.
Were you able to determine whether there was anything as far as her appearance that was consistent with diagnosis of depression? The, we've talked about factors that can lead to depression. Were you able to see factors in regards to this case, Mrs. Broderick, that contributed to her depression?
Objection asked and answered. Objection to the...
Sustained.
On what ground, Your Honor?
Asked and answered. She enumerated where she saw factors that related to depression.
Yeah, you've been,
I think she has. It's fine.
Well, we'll hear the question.
you mentioned the divorce was a factor. In what way was the divorce a factor?
Objection, she's testified to that. Besides, to the extent of the...
Overruled. No, answer that, Doc.
Well, I think that in the sense of Mrs. Broderick, it was a tremendous loss to her. She was
She gave her children away and then demanded them back and didn't get them back because she gave them away. She's cray-cray.
losing not only her husband and it
I'm
was
sorry, excuse me, Dr. Your Honor, this is all hearsay.
No, overruled. Go ahead.
she was losing her husband that indicated
Look at that happy face. That is not what my face looks like right now.
And how she responded to the divorce and her depression?
Objection, I think it's beyond the scope of the inquiry here generally, and it calls for hearsay.
Overruled. You can answer that. Yes or no, Doctor?
yes.
And how was that?
Overruled. You can answer that.
Well, in terms of perspective, she was in a very powerless position, and the sense of powerlessness that I think is one of the prime factors contributing to her depression.
Okay. Did the affair that Mr. Broderick was having, did that affect her affective mood or her depression?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
From Mrs. Broderick's perspective, that was a tremendous rejection of her. I think it's important to understand her, part of her personality functioning, to understand what that rejection meant. Mrs. Broderick is the type of person who is very important to please others, especially the people who are important to her. I even refer to her as a people pleaser. That's one of the things that is a problem for her. And the approval believing that he was having an affair was, of course, an extreme rejection and the epitome of his disapproval. That created a sense of real hopelessness in her in terms of she did not know what to do to correct that problem. She wanted to win him back. She wanted to correct that problem. She wanted to correct herself and make herself.
Was there,
Before you ask your next question, does any member of the jury need a break? I was planning to go to the lunch hour, if that's agreeable. For the witness, you're all right?
I'm fine, thank you.
We'd like a break, Your Honor.
Reporter needs a minute.
Your Honor, can we have a break? One of our members, please.
All right, we'll take a recess for 10 minutes, going to be long? 5 minutes.
Okay, we're gonna stop there. $53.59. What part is this? Oh, shoot. Tell me what part it is. Where's the number? Oh well, I'll figure it out. Okay, now come on, StreamYard, work. Yay! Okay, guys, we are gonna go now to Florida for the Jose Soto Escalera trial. What do you mean, no? Know yourself. I live in Florida. Florida is a good place. Just don't kill anybody. Florida's good. California bad. Florida good. Uh-oh, I dropped my sticky. Okay. Florida. Shut up, Wiggles. This should redirect you. I will see you guys over there in a minute. So, keep your hands and feet inside the ride at all times. I am not responsible for any lost articles of clothing or belongings. Hold your children tightly by the hand. I'll see you in a few minutes. Bye.